In this update, in the week ahead, we're going to be watching several pieces of energy. One up there into the north across Canada. There's going to be a pocket of much colder air going to be building. That's going to be diving southbound. So as we head into that Thursday morning, we could be looking at some freezing temperatures for those areas across the upper Midwest and into the Great Lakes, even some snow possible in portions of Minnesota. And then further south, we'll be watching an area of disturbed weather, which is now Tropical Storm Lorena. And that is likely going to be swinging through the Baja of California later on this week, and then eventually heading towards Oklahoma and Texas for this upcoming weekend, spreading some heavier rains and even some flooding potential. So overall, the setup for today kind of looks like this. We're going to be looking at a ridge of high pressure that's going to be pretty much dominating for those areas across the Pacific Northwest all week long. I don't really see that budging anytime soon. So you're going to be seeing temperatures well into the 90s, if not some areas under the triple digits, those into the Pacific Northwest and areas of Idaho. And then further south, we'll be looking at a kind of a rebounding effect of that cooler air mass that you dealt with over the weekend. Those temperatures likely start to warm up a little bit further south, but look at the colder push of air that's going to be coming in for today and to tomorrow, entering the lower 48. That is the piece of energy that will eventually slowly push further southbound and eventually take over a good part of the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. by the time we head into the weekend, into Monday. So here's the setup for today. We've got these Pacific systems, right? We've had one after another, and some of them have been swinging northbound, and then the remnants of them has actually spreaded tropical moisture back into the areas of Southern California. These are beneficial rains, as well as into areas of Arizona, into the Four Corners regions. And there is that piece of energy further to the north into Minnesota and Wisconsin. That is what's likely going to give us some even snow showers as we head into Wednesday night into Thursday. So for the setup going into Wednesday night, look at the area of low pressure down to a 997 millibar. This is kind of a potent, compact low pressure for the first week of September. And that's also going to be bringing freezes across Canada and northern portions of the Great Lakes into the Upper Peninsula. And also some wet snowflakes will likely start to fly, especially as we get into Wednesday night, as those temperatures start to plunge southbound. And there's Lorena off the coast of Baja California, just kind of waiting for it to push inward, but that won't be until the end of the week. So going into Thursday morning, these are actually actual temperatures, and yes, that is widespread 30s up there in North Dakota, back into South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, as well as in Wisconsin. And of course, there's pockets of it that could dip below freezing. Even some areas could, even some isolated areas, into the upper 20s. So this is definitely a colder shot of air for that first week of September. And we could be looking at even some sporadic record lows and definitely some record daytime low minimums as well during the daytime. And that is also going to be bringing a chill with some of the increased winds. Could bring even the wind chills back into the 30s, even 20s for a good chunk of that same region. And there is the precipitation around that low pressure center, likely producing at least some snow up there into the southern portions of Canada and the very tip of Minnesota. And I can't even rule out some flurries even swinging a little bit further south. But out ahead of it, we're still going to be looking at some kind of a cooler rain that's going to be taking shape over Indiana, as well as Ohio, and back into the Upper Peninsula. But there it is for Thursday. There's that colder pocket of air just building up to the north, while it's completely the opposite further south. So you're going to be rebounding. You had experienced some pleasant light conditions over the last weekend for your Labor Day, below average conditions. That becomes a distant memory as the ridge starts to build in, at least for a couple of days. Those temperatures will likely soar back into the 90s down there in Texas, kind of waiting for that relief of that cool spell that will likely take shape on the weekend. heading into Monday. So there's the setup on the surface map as we head into Thursday. You've got two areas of low pressure. Here's the more potent one, going to be highlighted over Canada and swinging a piece of energy further south. So likely this will be also a kind of a cooler rain during the day into Kentucky, West Virginia, back into those areas of Ohio, as well as into western Pennsylvania. And then there's a second piece of energy that will likely come back behind that one, and that is the piece of energy that will likely start to sink southbound as we head into Friday and into the weekend. So going into Friday, look at that widespread below average temperatures. I mean, this is definitely a cooler shot of air for this time of year, with a good 10, 15, even some areas looking at 20 degrees below average. And of course, further south, it's just all about the extremes. I mean, even some of these areas could be reach back into the triple digits possible going into Friday with that compressional heating ahead of that cold front that will likely sink into that area on Saturday, and that will likely combine with that Pacific system and set up likely a rainy weekend for the southern plains. So the setup on Friday has the instability and the rain showers along that boundary back into Kansas, into northern areas of Oklahoma, as well as into Missouri, northern portions of Arkansas, and Florida will also be in the rain prospects as well, with that daytime heating just kind of bubble up in the heat of the afternoon. And then we're going to be waiting on this low pressure center that will be making landfall, but then likely the remnants of Lorena could be actually a hurricane by Thursday, spreading its tropical moisture back into Texas and into Oklahoma by this weekend. So for Saturday, for those areas into Oklahoma and portions of North Texas, will start to feel the effects of that cool down coming. And of those cooler temperatures, most of the areas of the north will be experiencing pretty much all week long. You get into that cool spell going into the weekend, combining with that area of low pressure. There is the latest update from Tropical Storm Lorena, and now it's a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Just south of Mexico here, but it's going to continue northwest bound, and there it is. Likely by Wednesday heading into Thursday morning, we could be looking at another hurricane out there in the Pacific, and then it kind of weakens as it makes landfall, and then it becomes a depression, but it will likely spread that moisture and back into Texas heading into this weekend. So the setup for this weekend definitely has a lot of moisture content going to be locked over the state of Texas as well as into Oklahoma. We could be looking at definitely some heavier rains again, and even some flash flooding potential with the combination of that slow moving front to the north and the remnants of what was going to be Lorena by then. That 1-2 punch, if you will be enough to cause probably flood watches to be taking place, and some isolated flash flooding is definitely not ruled out, especially with some of the higher precipitational water content values the atmosphere is going to be back in of those over 2 inches per hour. We kind of saw a similar setup this past weekend, right? I mean, Labor Day weekend ended up being pretty rainy for those areas because of the remnants of Tropical Storm Juliet. Now we've got Lorena kind of doing the same type thing. So we have the potential again to have these multiple disturbances that move across in a tropical type air mass with no cap atmosphere. It doesn't take long as you get a little bit of daytime heating to overturn the atmosphere. And then you've also have low moving steering currents this time of year can produce some 1, 2, even upwards to almost 3 inches per hour rainfall rates at time. Lay down some pretty good downpours in a very short amount of time is definitely not out of the question. But by the time we get into Sunday, heading into Monday, yes, those cooler anomalies will be taking effect, along with the cloudier conditions, the rainy areas for those areas across the southern plains. Much of the southeast will likely start getting into the action, and into the Tennessee, Ohio Valley, and even into the northeast. I mean, there's going to be a good chunk of the U.S., at least the central and eastern 2/3, besides the Pacific Northwest, you still got the ridge in play, but everybody else along the central and eastern 2/3 corridor will be feeling the effects of this cool down. And if you break it down for the next 7 days, it's definitely a cooler shot of air over the next 7 days if you combine the average minimums. And yes, that will likely put it into the east of the continental divide for those areas into, east, central, and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. We'll still get some monsoonal flow and the Pacific storms that will impact the desert Southwest. And then, of course, the heat won't be going anywhere for the Northwest. So if we break it down for the rain amounts, yeah, it kind of looks like this. I mean, those are beneficial rains into Southern California, areas of the Four Corners regions into the desert Southwest. Not much where the ridge is, but we are going to be at least squeezing out some rain showers into Nevada, back into Utah, into Colorado. But then, of course, there's that tropical moisture. The combination of that front will be seeking southbound Kansas, Oklahoma, and those areas into Texas. And then we have the low pressure centers, right around the low pressure center. That's likely going to get the heaviest rain. Some of that could be the chillier rain. Even some snow is going to be flying out of that. And then the secondary push of energy that will come later in the week, that will swing across the northern plains back into the upper Midwest and leave some 1 to 2 inch amounts for those areas in Ohio, back into Kansas. We'll have a little dry slot down in the southeast. And then, of course, the boundary will likely set up across Florida with those daytime bubble up heating type, diurnal type showers and thunderstorms into the afternoon. So guys, I appreciate you watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch the next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.